Across the world, some discoveries resist explanation, leaving even the most experienced scientists unsettled. From the frozen, contorted mummies of Egypt to black glass caverns hidden beneath Kamchatka, and from underwater spires in Tonga to the eerie obsidian temple deep in Mexico's jungle. These sites share one thing in common: a haunting sense of mystery. Each location tells a story through objects, landscapes, and structures that challenge our understanding of history, geology, and life itself. As we explore massive monoliths, alien skeletal remains, and impossible crystal formations, the line between natural phenomena and the inexplicable blurs. Some places provoke fear, others awe, yet all demand attention. Join us as we journey into the remote, the hidden, and the unsettling, uncovering discoveries that defy logic, spark legends, and leave us questioning what we think we know about the world. The screaming mummies of Egypt. In the arid expanse of Egypt's Valley of the Kings, a recently uncovered tomb has left archaeologists grappling with a discovery that defies understanding, for within its darkened chambers lay dozens of mummies, frozen in postures of absolute terror, their bodies twisted and contorted in ways that seemed almost deliberate, as if they had been caught in the instant of unimaginable panic. Unlike traditional burials, where the deceased are carefully arranged to reflect serenity and reverence, these figures appeared trapped in the throes of their final moments, with arms flung above their heads, mouths open in silent screams, and fingers clawing outward as though desperate to push away some unseen horror that had claimed them. Dr. Ahmed El Sayed, the Egyptologist who first documented the site in 1998, recalled the profound unease that overcame him and his team when they stepped inside the tomb, describing an almost tangible aura of dread that seemed to cling to the stone walls and the air itself, as if the very fear of the mummies had seeped into the surrounding space. The walls were covered in hieroglyphs that, while faded and partially eroded, depicted scenes far darker than typical funerary imagery, showing figures writhing in pain, humanoid forms with grotesquely elongated features, and rituals that suggested the dead had been subjected to forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Scientific analysis confirmed that the mummies dated to the late New Kingdom period, around 1200 BCE, yet their preserved positions continued to baffle experts, for even those well-versed in ancient embalming techniques could not reconcile the violent postures with known methods of mummification. Many of the bodies showed no signs of trauma or disease that might explain the terror frozen on their faces, leaving researchers with the unsettling possibility that the expressions and positions captured something more than the mere passage of time, something intrinsic to the moment of death itself. Those who spent prolonged periods inside the tomb described strange phenomena that could not be easily explained. Sudden chills would sweep through the chambers despite the dry, stagnant air, and some team members reported hearing soft whispers or faint moans that seemed to echo from the walls themselves, though no source could be found. The tomb's architecture may have contributed to acoustic anomalies, but the reports of intense psychological unease, disorientation, and even vivid nightmares among researchers suggested an atmosphere that extended beyond simple physical causes. Among the mummies, one figure in particular drew relentless attention, its face frozen in a mask of horror, eyes wide and mouth agape, with arms tightly crossed against the chest, while fingers curled outward, as if resisting some unseen force. Radiographic imaging revealed no fractures or signs of struggle, yet the intensity of fear captured in the body left a lasting impression on all who studied it. Visitors later described an almost suffocating sensation of being observed, a feeling that transcended rational explanation and seemed to emanate directly from the mummified form itself. Local lore spoke of spirits known as the crying dead, entities said to be trapped within tombs by ancient curses designed to deter grave robbers. And while many dismissed these tales as superstition, the chaotic positioning of the mummies and the oppressive atmosphere of the chambers lent an eerie credibility to the stories. Archaeologists working in the tomb for extended periods noted recurring nightmares, in which visions of twisted bodies and silent screams invaded their sleep, suggesting a psychological resonance with the anguish preserved within the mummies themselves. The discovery also challenged long-held assumptions about Egyptian burial practices, which traditionally emphasized order, ritual, and respect for the deceased. For here, the disorder appeared deliberate, a stark contradiction to conventional funerary norms. Some researchers speculated that these individuals may have been subjected to execution or punishment rituals, while others proposed that they were victims of a catastrophic event, frozen in terror at the instant of death. Yet no historical record corresponds to the level of horror represented by the tomb's contents. Despite decades of study and advanced imaging techniques, the mummies remain entirely human, with no evidence of mutation or unknown species, and yet their preserved agony continues to unsettle experts and laypeople alike. How ordinary humans could be contorted into such unnatural positions, maintaining expressions of panic for thousands of years, remains a question that defies reason, and every new examination seems to deepen the mystery rather than clarify it. Even now, the screaming mummies of Egypt retain the power to disturb anyone who views them, whether in person or through photographs, their twisted forms serving as an enduring testament to something lost in time, something that science has yet to comprehend, leaving those who encounter them with a lingering sense of unease that refuses to dissipate. The glowstone chasms of Madagascar. Deep in the heart of Madagascar, far from the coastal towns and the familiar trails of tourists, explorers discovered a chasm unlike anything recorded in modern geology. Known as the glowstone chasms, this immense sinkhole stretches for hundreds of meters, its walls lined with mineral deposits that emit an eerie phosphorescent glow. The light is faint yet persistent, casting shadows that twist and writhe across the jagged rock, creating shapes that often resemble monstrous figures or twisting faces. Visitors who have peered into the depths describe a sensation of vertigo and unease, as if the chasm itself is alive, watching every movement from the shadows. Jean-René Andrianarivo, a geologist who first documented the site in 2004, recalled the first descent into the gorge. "We expected a simple cave system," he said, "but as we moved deeper, the walls seemed to pulse with light. It was unsettling. Every corner revealed new formations that looked like claws or faces frozen in agony. The glow comes from rare mineral deposits in the rock, primarily phosphorescent silicates, but no scientific explanation fully accounts for the patterns they create. The shadows seem to move independently of the light source, and many researchers report a creeping sense of disorientation when they attempt to map the chasm. The structure of the chasm itself adds to the unease. The walls are uneven and sharp, with pockets and tunnels that open unexpectedly, leading into darkness, where the glow fades only to return with a subtle, almost whispering shimmer further down. Echoes in these tunnels are distorted, amplifying the sound of footsteps or the clink of climbing equipment, often producing noises that resemble distant cries or murmurs. The combination of visual distortion and auditory illusion has caused seasoned explorers to halt their descent more than once, reporting feelings of anxiety that intensify with each step deeper into the sinkhole. Early in the study, local villagers spoke of the area with caution, describing the chasm as a place of spirits and misfortune. For generations, they avoided its edges, recounting stories of people who ventured too close, only to disappear or return altered, pale, and shaken. While such accounts are anecdotal, some researchers admit that there is an undeniable psychological effect produced by the chasm. In 2011, a team of speleologists attempted a full mapping of the chasm's depths using ropes, drones, and specialized lighting equipment. As they descended, they discovered areas where the glowing minerals were so dense that the walls appeared to writhe, forming faces, hands, and shapes that seemed almost sentient. In one section, a narrow tunnel forced them to crouch, and as they passed, the flickering lights cast shadows that stretched along the walls in forms too intricate to be accidental. The peculiar glow patterns of the chasm continue to baffle scientists, even after careful measurements and chemical analysis. Researchers confirmed that no biological organisms were producing bioluminescence, and no atmospheric conditions could account for the way the light pulses through the rock. These uncertainties have made the glowstone chasms a subject of fascination and unease, drawing specialists from around the world while maintaining an almost forbidden reputation for the unprepared. Explorers who have spent extended time in the chasm describe an atmosphere that is physically and mentally taxing. Sleep becomes difficult in nearby camps as the glow penetrates even the darkness of night, and those inside the sinkhole report headaches, vertigo, and a persistent sense of being observed. Some describe fleeting glimpses of movement in their peripheral vision, moments when shadows seem to twist independently of any tangible object. While these experiences could be attributed to exhaustion and the mind's natural reaction to the eerie environment, their consistency across independent accounts has prompted deeper investigation into the psychological impact of the glowstone chasms. Beyond highlighting Madagascar's geological distinctiveness, the discovery has challenged perceptions of how much humans can truly understand about landscapes that defy explanation. Researchers continue to return, equipped with advanced cameras, sensors, and mapping technology, hoping to capture and quantify the strange phenomena. Yet even after years of study, no conclusive explanation has emerged for the shifting shadows, the pulsing glow, or the visceral fear reported by those who venture inside. The glowstone chasms remain one of the most enigmatic and unsettling natural formations on the planet, a place where light, stone, and shadow converge to create an experience that unsettles even the most experienced explorers. The Dyatlov Pass incident. The Ural Mountains stretch in cold, unforgiving lines across Russia, their peaks often hidden beneath thick snow and swirling clouds. And it was here in February 1959 that a group of experienced hikers faced a tragedy that has puzzled investigators for decades. The Dyatlov expedition, led by Igor Dyatlov, consisted of 9 men and 2 women, all seasoned trekkers accustomed to harsh conditions. They set out with confidence, their goal to reach a Torten mountain, but what they encountered instead was a nightmare that left more questions than answers. When search teams finally located the campsite, the scene was unlike anything the rescuers had expected. The hiker's tent had been slashed open from the inside, a clear sign that the occupants had fled in a rush. Footprints in the snow showed them moving barefoot and inadequately dressed into the freezing night, some carrying nothing but socks or underwear. The suddenness of their exit suggested extreme fear, yet there were no signs of an external struggle, no footprints leading to the camp from other parties, and no evidence of an attack by local wildlife. The bodies were discovered in stages, scattered over several hundred meters, each with injuries that defied easy explanation. Some hikers were found with broken ribs or skull fractures, while others had missing eyes or tongues. Medical reports confirmed that these injuries could not be caused by conventional human force alone, and there were no wounds consistent with animal attacks. The remaining hikers froze to death in positions suggesting they had tried to huddle together for warmth, yet the brutality and randomness of their injuries continued to confound investigators. Forensic analysis at the time revealed that radiation traces were present on some clothing, a detail that has fueled decades of speculation about secret military tests or other unexplained phenomena. Theories ranged from avalanche and katabatic wind to secret Soviet experiments, yet none could fully account for all the anomalies observed at the site. The precise timing of the hikers' deaths remains uncertain, and the sequence of events leading to the frantic escape from the tent is still a matter of debate. Survivors of the search effort recounted the chilling atmosphere surrounding the area. The snow-covered landscape was eerily quiet, with only the wind moving across the slopes, yet some reported a sense of unease, an inexplicable tension that seemed to hang over the mountains. The positioning of the bodies, the tent, and the scattered personal items created a visual narrative of panic and disorientation that investigators could not fully reconcile with known natural causes. The tent itself, cut open from the inside, raises questions about what could drive experienced hikers to abandon their shelter in the dead of night under extreme weather conditions. Some suggest they may have encountered a sudden natural phenomenon, such as an avalanche or infrasound-induced panic, while others point to more speculative explanations involving unidentified forces. Whatever the cause, the behavior captured in the snow and the injuries observed on the bodies point to a scenario of intense fear and chaos that has no clear historical precedent. Eyewitness accounts from local guides and villagers provided additional context, though they offered no direct answers. Reports mentioned strange lights in the sky in the days leading up to the incident and unusual sounds that could not be traced to wind or animals. While these accounts are anecdotal, they contribute to the enduring mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident, highlighting how the environment itself seemed to conspire against the hikers, creating conditions that were both physically and psychologically extreme. Over the years, investigators have returned repeatedly to Dyatlov Pass, conducting new analyses with modern equipment, including forensic reconstruction, 3D mapping, and climatic modeling. Each study confirms the harsh and dangerous conditions of the terrain, yet none fully explains the combination of injuries, behavior, and anomalies observed at the scene. The incident continues to attract attention, not only from historians and scientists, but also from those fascinated by the unknown, as it represents one of the most unsettling and unsolved tragedies of the 20th century. To this day, Dyatlov Pass exerts a steady, almost magnetic pull on researchers and enthusiasts alike. The frozen landscape preserves the memory of the hikers' final hours, and photographs of the site convey a stark sense of isolation and dread. Every detail, from the torn tent to the scattered belongings, suggests a sudden encounter with something incomprehensible, a force or circumstance that drove 11 experienced individuals to flee in terror, leaving a story that continues to baffle, disturb, and haunt anyone who examines it closely. The humanoid skeletons of Peru. High in the arid highlands of southern Peru, in a region long known for its ancient ruins and burial sites, a discovery emerged that left anthropologists and local archaeologists struggling to explain what they had found. During an excavation near the Nazca Plateau in 2012, a team uncovered a series of skeletal remains unlike anything recorded in the region's history. The skeletons were humanoid in shape, but far larger than ordinary humans, with elongated skulls, unusually long limbs, and joint structures that appeared almost impossible for conventional human anatomy. Dr. Luis Ramirez, who led the excavation, recalled the moment his team first unearthed the remains. "At first, we assumed they were malformed humans, or perhaps a ceremonial exaggeration," he said. "But as we exposed more of the skeletons, it became clear that these were individuals unlike anything we had ever studied. The bones were massive, and their proportions did not match any known species, past or present. Carbon dating placed the remains at roughly 10 years old, and the level of preservation allowed researchers to study the bone structure in detail, revealing a complexity that challenged conventional anthropological models. The skulls were among the most striking features. Each one was elongated and smooth, with a narrow jawline and disproportionately large eye sockets. The cranial volume suggested brains much larger than those of ordinary humans, yet there were no signs of deformation caused by external binding or ritual shaping. The limbs were equally perplexing. Arms and legs extended beyond what would be expected for a human of the same height, and the joints indicated a flexibility and range of motion that modern humans cannot achieve. Several skeletons appeared to reach heights of over 2.5 meters, dwarfing the average stature of the region's population, both today and in the past. Local legends speak of beings called the Altipuma, tall, otherworldly creatures said to roam the highlands long before the arrival of the Inca. Villagers in nearby communities reported unease when researchers worked in the area, claiming they could feel a presence watching from the hills, a sensation that became stronger as more of the remains were uncovered. These accounts, though anecdotal, mirrored the unease that permeated the excavation site, as if the landscape itself held memory of the beings buried there. One skeleton in particular drew the attention of the scientific team. Its hands were unusually long, with fingers that tapered into fine points, and the chest cavity suggested a lung capacity far beyond normal human limit. Analysis revealed a series of healed fractures and signs of age, indicating that these were fully grown adults who had survived for decades in their environment. Yet nothing in the historical record mentions creatures of this size or structure inhabiting the region. The posture of the skeleton, with its long limbs slightly bent as if in a resting stance, evoked a strange sense of life, as though it had been caught mid-motion and preserved intentionally or by some unknown circumstance. Intensive study failed to reveal a clear classification for the skeletons. DNA analysis conducted in 2015 confirmed that the remains were human in the broadest sense, yet the combination of their size, proportions, and cranial features placed them far outside normal human variation. Each test only deepened the mystery, forcing researchers to acknowledge that these beings had lived, aged, and died in a way that current science cannot fully explain. The excavation site also contained artifacts whose purpose remains unknown. Small stone tools and ornamental objects were discovered alongside the skeletons, but they did not match the style or craftsmanship typical of local cultures from the same period. Some items appeared to be ceremonial, carved from materials not found naturally in the surrounding area, suggesting either trade with distant regions or a society whose origins have been lost entirely. Experts across the globe, from anthropologists to cryptozoologists, have long been fascinated by the humanoid skeletons of Peru, seeking to make sense of them within the framework of recorded history. How could beings of such size and proportion exist alongside ordinary humans without leaving a clear record? How did they survive in a harsh environment for centuries? And why had they been buried in ways that preserved them so completely, yet left no trace of their civilization elsewhere? The place still commands awe, shadowed by an inexplicable feeling of discomfort. Photographs of the skeletons reveal forms so alien yet unmistakably human, with elongated skulls and towering limbs casting shadows that seem to stretch beyond the frame. For those who witness the excavation or study the remains, there is a persistent sense that these were not merely humans but something more. The cursed crystal forest of Chile, deep in the remote Atacama Desert, beyond the barren salt flats and jagged cliffs, miners stumbled upon a site that has since defied explanation and sparked both fear and fascination. In 2008, a team working in a rarely explored canyon uncovered a dense field of crystalline formations, unlike anything recorded in geological studies of the region. Towering crystals, some reaching over 3 meters in height, erupted from the ground at sharp angles, their surfaces catching sunlight in a way that created flickering patterns across the canyon walls. The formations were composed of pure quartz, interlaced with traces of minerals that produced faint vibrations, subtle hums that could be felt in the bones when standing among them. Dr. Isabel Moreno, a geologist with the University of Santiago, recalled her first visit to the site. "The moment we entered, it felt as if the air itself was vibrating," she said. "Every step seemed to echo against the crystals, and the reflections from their faces made it difficult to distinguish reality from illusion. These sounds and reflections were not caused by wind or conventional environmental factors, and measurements confirmed that the vibrations were consistent yet inexplicable, emanating from the mineral structures themselves." Explorers reported that standing in certain areas produced a disorienting sense, as if the crystals were communicating or reacting to their presence. The layout of the forest added to the unsettling atmosphere. The crystals grew in irregular clusters, with jagged edges pointing in all directions, forming narrow pathways that forced miners and researchers to move cautiously. Shadows from the formations created shapes that resembled reaching hands or contorted figures, often triggering a sense of unease, even in those accustomed to harsh and dangerous environments. Photographs taken inside the forest show what appear to be faces and limbs etched into the crystal surfaces, though no natural formation should create such precise shapes. Local legends contributed to the sense of dread surrounding the site. Indigenous communities had long spoken of the canyon as cursed, a place where travelers might become lost or driven to panic by unseen forces. While these accounts were once dismissed as folklore, the reports from scientists and miners experiencing sudden disorientation, headaches, and anxiety while in the crystal field lent credibility to the warnings. Some claimed to have felt compelled to leave abruptly, describing a pervasive sensation of being watched or nudged by invisible presences. In 2011, a research team returned with advanced sensing equipment to investigate the phenomenon more closely. They discovered that the crystals emitted a subtle electromagnetic field, though its origin remained unknown, and the frequencies produced aligned with the vibrations that explorers reported. These pulses seemed to affect the nervous system, causing temporary vertigo, nausea, or a heightened sense of fear. The forest also contained anomalies in the surrounding rock and soil. Some minerals were fused in patterns that did not follow conventional crystallization processes, while other areas appeared to have been disturbed, as if something had carved or arranged the crystals deliberately. Researchers noted that certain clusters formed corridors and chambers, almost resembling structures that could be navigated like a labyrinth, heightening the sense that the area had been shaped with purpose, though by what or whom remained unknown. Several incidents in the following years added to the forest's reputation for danger. Miners who spent extended periods collecting samples reported sudden panic attacks, tremors, and, in rare cases, fainting spells, all without any physical cause. The psychological effects were consistent across independent observers, indicating that the forest itself seemed to exert influence over those within it. Even brief exposure produced unease, as if the crystals resonated with emotions or intentions, amplifying fear and disorientation to levels that forced immediate withdrawal. Ongoing investigations have yet to provide a complete explanation for the cursed crystal forest of Chile. Chemical analysis, electromagnetic measurements, and geological surveys have catalogued its anomalies, but none have clarified why the formations produce vibrations, distort perception, or provoke fear. The site remains largely off-limits to casual visitors, not merely for safety, but because the effects on those who linger too long can be intense and unpredictable. For those who have witnessed the forest firsthand, the experience leaves a lasting impression. The towering, shimmering crystals, the low hum vibrating through the air, and the shadows that shift unnaturally combine to create a place that feels alive and intelligent. It is a landscape that challenges the limits of human understanding, leaving visitors with a persistent sense that the canyon is more than stone and mineral, that it is a site of forces both beautiful and terrifying, an enduring mystery that refuses to yield its secrets. The abyssal black coral forest, Pacific Ocean, far beneath the waves of the Pacific, in waters so deep that sunlight barely penetrates, researchers have discovered an environment that seems almost otherworldly. In 2015, a team of deep-sea biologists aboard the research vessel Kaikoura explored a previously unmapped canyon off the coast of Papua New Guinea and found a dense forest of black coral stretching for kilometers across the ocean floor. Unlike the delicate, brightly colored corals familiar in shallow reefs, these formations were massive, dark, and twisted, their limbs intertwining to create structures that resembled grasping hands or grotesque faces frozen in mid-scream. The first descent into the abyss was recounted by Dr. Mariko Tanaka, who led the expedition. "The corals seemed alive," she said. "Even with the submersible lights, shadows shifted in ways that were almost impossible to explain, and every movement felt observed. The formations looked like something out of a nightmare, yet they were entirely natural." The black coral is composed of a slow-growing species that thrives in extreme depths, and while its structure is scientifically documented, the sheer density and unusual shapes of this forest are unique. As the submersible moved through the forest, the team noted the presence of unknown predators. Dark, sinuous creatures slipped silently among the coral branches, their movements eerily coordinated, suggesting an ecosystem that has evolved in isolation. Some of the animals were entirely new to science, with elongated bodies, reflective eyes, and appendages that allowed them to cling to the jagged coral while hunting or evading detection. Observing these creatures created an unnerving sensation, as if the forest itself was aware of the intruders navigating its shadowy corridors. The coral formations cast distorted shadows that seemed to move independently of the submersible's lights. In certain sections, the structures rose like towers, while in others, they bent over, creating tunnels that twisted and curved unexpectedly. Navigating the forest required precise maneuvering, and the smallest mistake risked collision with sharp, brittle branches that could pierce the hull of the submersible. Video footage taken during the expedition shows the coral branches forming shapes that resemble screaming faces, hands, and humanoid figures, leaving observers with the unsettling impression that the forest is actively watching. Local legends from coastal communities describe mysterious deep-sea regions where fishermen hear unidentifiable sounds and occasionally lose equipment to currents that seem almost intelligent. While these stories were long dismissed as folklore, the discovery of the black coral forest provided a new context. Oceanographers noted that the canyon has unusual thermal currents and magnetic anomalies that influence both marine life and navigation equipment, making it difficult to explore fully and contributing to the eerie atmosphere reported by the expedition team. The density of the forest is unlike any known underwater ecosystem. Some coral formations are over 10 meters tall, with bases as wide as small trees, and the spaces between them form labyrinthine passages that challenge even experienced submersible pilots. The team found that light scattered unpredictably through the branches, creating illusions of movement where none existed. In one instance, the submersible cameras captured shadows that appeared to follow the vessel through a narrow corridor, an effect caused by the complex interaction of light and coral structure, yet no one could deny the uncanny sensation that something was actively observing their progress. Researchers documented strange acoustic phenomena as well. The forest seems to amplify certain low-frequency sounds, producing vibrations that resonate through the submersible and are sometimes perceived as moans or groans. These effects are subtle but persistent, creating a psychological pressure that intensifies as the craft moves deeper into the canyon. Even when instruments confirm no human or animal origin, the sensations reported by the crew were consistent and disturbing, adding to the sense of being in an environment both alien and alive. Even with continued research, the abyssal black coral forest conceals most of its secrets in shadowed depth. The extreme depths, combined with the jagged terrain and the dense, shadowy formations, make thorough exploration hazardous and slow. Each expedition has revealed new species, strange formations, and unexplained interactions between coral, water currents, and animal life. The forest challenges assumptions about marine ecosystems, revealing a world that is beautiful, terrifying, and wholly uncharted. To anyone who has seen it in person, the forest makes an unforgettable impression. The towering black corals, the twisting shadows, and the movement of creatures within the labyrinth create an environment that feels sentient, as if the ocean itself has crafted a place that watches, waits, and reacts to intruders. In this remote corner of the Pacific, nature has produced an abyssal realm that is as unnerving as it is mesmerizing, a haunting reminder of the mysteries that still lie hidden beneath the waves. The shimmering ice caves of Antarctica. Along the remote stretches of Antarctica's Ross Ice Shelf, a team of glaciologists uncovered a series of ice caves whose scale and strangeness immediately set them apart from anything previously documented. In 2013, researchers led by Dr. Elena Kostova descended into a cavern near the edge of the shelf, where walls of crystal-clear ice reflected the pale sunlight that managed to filter through the surface. The formations within were jagged and irregular, some resembling towering spires while others bent over to form natural archways, their surfaces glowing with a soft, unearthly light that shifted as explorers moved deeper into the cave system. The caves were more than just visually stunning. As the team advanced, they noticed that the ice walls seemed to pulse faintly, producing vibrations that resonated through the soles of their boots. Measurements revealed subtle, rhythmic oscillations in the ice itself, but no mechanical or geological explanation accounted for the phenomenon. Explorers described a disorienting effect as shadows stretched and twisted across the walls, sometimes forming shapes that looked like faces frozen in silent screams. The sensation of movement within the ice, combined with the glow and vibrations, created an atmosphere that was beautiful yet profoundly unsettling. One particularly striking chamber contained stalactites and stalagmites of ice that bent into sharp, unnatural angles, forming narrow corridors that forced the team to squeeze between them. The formations created reflections that appeared to shift as the explorers moved, producing illusions of figures gliding along the walls. In the deeper recesses of the cave, the ice took on a blue hue, so intense it seemed almost alive, and the interplay of light and shadow made it difficult to distinguish between solid ice and space. Several members of the expedition reported a creeping sense of vertigo, as if the cave itself were subtly tilting or expanding around them. Life still persisted within the caves. Tiny crustaceans and extremophile microbes were observed clinging to surfaces where mineral-rich meltwater seeped through the walls, but the ecosystem seemed fragile and minimal. The apparent absence of larger life forms only heightened the sense of isolation, emphasizing the alien quality of the ice formations. The interplay of shape, reflection, and vibration suggested an environment that operated on its own terms, independent of the outside world and impervious to human presence. Local meteorological studies helped explain some of the unusual ice patterns. The region experiences strong katabatic winds and extreme temperature fluctuations, which over centuries have carved and polished the ice into forms more intricate than previously thought possible. However, the shapes and the subtle pulsing of the ice remain unexplained, leaving scientists to acknowledge that even the harshest Antarctic conditions cannot fully account for the cave's eerie qualities. Every passage seemed to reveal something new: formations that resembled reaching hands, elongated shadows that appeared to follow explorers, and light patterns that defied prediction. Hidden chambers and narrow crevices filled the caves, with some areas requiring specialized gear to enter. In these confined spaces, the walls of ice seemed to hum faintly, amplifying sounds made by the researchers and producing a resonance that some compared to distant moaning. The effect was subtle but psychologically powerful, and even seasoned scientists found themselves pausing to steady their nerves before proceeding. Video footage captured the light and shadow interplay, revealing fleeting shapes that were impossible to categorize, further reinforcing the idea that the caves are as disorienting as they are spectacular. Exploration of the ice caves has continued in the years since the initial discovery. Advanced mapping techniques, including LiDAR scanning and thermal imaging, have revealed extensive networks of interconnected chambers, tunnels, and vertical shafts, many of which remain largely unexplored due to safety concerns. Despite decades of Antarctic research, these caves remain a striking example of the continent's ability to surprise and unsettle even the most experienced field teams. The deeper the explorers venture, the more the environment challenges perception, blending natural beauty with a persistent sense of unease. Anyone who has ventured into the shimmering ice caves carries the memory long afterward. The glowing walls, jagged formations, and faint vibrations create an environment that feels almost sentient, as if the ice itself is aware of intrusion. Shadows twist unnaturally, and the narrow corridors amplify every sound, reinforcing the impression of being watched. Even after leaving the caves, researchers report a lingering unease, a memory of shapes, light, and sounds that defy rational explanation. In the vast, frozen wilderness of Antarctica, these ice caves stand as a reminder that some of the most stunning discoveries are also the most unsettling, revealing a hidden world where natural forces converge to create a place that is haunting, mysterious, and impossible to ignore. The bog bodies of Northern Europe. In the misty wetlands of Northern Europe, Where thick layers of peat preserve history in ways the earth elsewhere cannot, archaeologists have uncovered human remains that have baffled scholars for decades. Known as bog bodies, these remains are often astonishingly well preserved, with skin, hair, and even clothing surviving for thousands of years. Excavations in Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands, beginning in the early 20th century, revealed corpses that seem to have been placed deliberately in the peat, their deaths violent and often ritualistic, yet the reason for their sacrifice remains unknown. The Tolland man, discovered in 1950 near Silkeborg, Denmark, is one of the most famous examples. The preservation was so complete that forensic scientists could reconstruct the features of his face, revealing a man in his early 40s with a faint smile frozen on his lips. Analysis of his stomach contents indicated he had eaten a simple porridge just hours before his death, suggesting that the timing of his sacrifice may have been carefully chosen. Other bog bodies, like the Grauballe man and the Winderby girl, tell equally chilling stories. Grauballe man, found in Jutland in 1952, had a throat cut so precisely that forensic experts noted it would have been fatal almost instantly. His long hair and fingers were intact, and the expression on his face suggested terror in the final moments. Winderby girl, discovered in northern Germany, had been bound and submerged, and her skeleton and skin were preserved to an extraordinary degree. These discoveries demonstrate not only the unusual conditions of the bogs, but also the meticulous care, or perhaps ritual intent behind these deaths. Researchers have identified patterns among the bog bodies. Many show signs of strangulation, stabbing, or blunt force trauma, and their positioning often suggests ceremonial placement rather than hurried disposal. The bogs themselves act as natural preservatives. Low oxygen levels, acidic waters, and cold temperatures slow decomposition, allowing details like fingerprints, hair color, and stomach contents to remain intact for centuries. Local folklore has long hinted at the dangers and mysteries of the bogs. Peat cutters and villagers historically spoke of spirits inhabiting the wetlands, warning that entering certain areas could bring death or misfortune. Some bog bodies were discovered by accident, while others came to light during systematic peat harvesting. In every case, the bodies evoke unease. The combination of preserved human features and the knowledge of a violent, purposeful death leaves a haunting impression that persists long after the discovery. In 1980, a team conducting excavations in the Dutch province of Drenthe uncovered a bog body with extensive ritual markings on the limbs and torso. Carbon dating suggested the individual had lived during the Iron Age, and chemical analysis revealed substances on the skin that may have been used in ceremonial rites. This find reinforced theories that bog bodies were not mere victims of random violence, but participants in a cultural or religious practice, one that remains largely enigmatic to modern scholars. Scholars have speculated that these sacrifices served as tributes to gods or spirits connected to farming, fertility, or climate, with the bogs playing a central role in early European life. However, no written records exist to confirm the purpose, leaving only physical evidence and speculation. Even the placement of the bodies, carefully positioned, sometimes with arms crossed or hands bound, suggests a ritualistic intent, creating an unsettling sense that these deaths were controlled, purposeful, and deeply significant within their cultural context. The fascination with bog bodies endures because they exist on the edge of the natural world and something otherworldly. The level of preservation gives the impression that the individuals could almost awaken, and the violence evident in their deaths invites reflection on ancient customs that are both alien and terrifying to modern observers. Each body tells a story of fear, ritual, and death, frozen in time by the unique chemistry of the bogs, leaving behind a haunting legacy that evokes awe, dread, and unanswered questions. Viewing the bog bodies leaves a lasting, haunting impression. The preserved faces, the hints of expression, and the knowledge of how each person died combine to create a chilling connection across centuries. Standing over a body like Tolland man or Grauballe man, it is impossible not to feel the weight of history, the presence of lives ended violently, but preserved with a clarity that challenges understanding. In the silent, misty wetlands, these remains continue to tell their story, a testament to rituals long forgotten and a mystery that refuses to yield its secrets. The Atacama skeleton Ata. Worldwide attention turned to a remote Atacama desert town in Chile in 2003, following a discovery that fueled debate among scientists, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists. A tiny, mummified skeleton was found in a deserted medical clinic near the coastal city of Lenoria. Measuring only about 15 centimeters in length, the remains appeared fully formed, with a head disproportionately large compared to the body and long, slender limbs. Initial speculation suggested it could be a prematurely born infant or a deformed human, but detailed examination quickly revealed that this was no ordinary case. The skeleton, nicknamed Ata, drew the attention of Dr. Gary Nolan, a geneticist from Stanford University, who conducted extensive DNA testing in 2013. Analysis showed that the remains were human in origin, but the unusual bone structure, small size, and shape of the skull could not be easily explained by known human conditions. The skull featured an elongated cranium, a pronounced forehead, and large eye sockets, while the rib cage was narrow and the arms and legs appeared unusually thin and fragile. Even with modern medical knowledge, these features challenged expectations for human anatomy. The unusual formation of Ata's bones was also observed by researchers. X-rays and CT scans indicated that the skeleton was fully developed, with growth plates closed, suggesting the individual had lived for several years despite its tiny stature. This discovery contradicted theories that the remains were merely a premature infant or a case of dwarfism. The hands and fingers were articulated and finely formed, while the spine contained an abnormal number of vertebrae, contributing to a slightly curved posture. Such anomalies made it clear that Ata was a unique case, one that defied conventional understanding of human development. The condition of the skeleton added another layer of intrigue. Despite its diminutive size, Ata's bones were remarkably well preserved, with minimal signs of decay. The mummification appeared natural, aided by the extremely dry desert conditions of the Atacama region. This preservation allowed scientists to study the skeleton in detail, from cranial sutures to tiny finger joints, providing an unprecedented glimpse into an individual that appeared to have lived and died centuries ago. Radiocarbon dating suggested that Ata had lived approximately between 1950 and 2000, though the exact circumstances of death remain unknown. Public fascination with Ata was fueled by the sheer strangeness of the skeletal features. Some suggested extraterrestrial origins due to the elongated skull and unusual body proportions, while others proposed rare genetic mutations or a previously undocumented human disorder. Dr. Nolan emphasized that while the skeleton is extraordinary, all evidence points to a human being affected by a combination of bone and growth abnormalities, rather than an alien entity. Despite this explanation, Ata remains a source of speculation and intrigue worldwide, appearing in documentaries, scientific journals, and online discussions. The discovery site itself contributes to the mystery. La Noria is an abandoned town, once centered around nitrate mining, and the clinic where Ata was found had been deserted for decades. Few records exist explaining how the skeleton ended up there, and no information clarifies who cared for the individual during its life. This lack of context leaves open questions about Ata's origins, survival, and the circumstances of death, heightening the sense of mystery and unease surrounding the tiny remains. In addition to anatomical anomalies, Ata's skull shows unusual bone density and a cranial structure that hints at differences in neurological development. While the implications remain unclear, these features have led researchers to explore how genetic, environmental, or nutritional factors may have interacted to produce such a unique individual. Further studies have examined Ata's DNA, confirming human origins, but also highlighting rare mutations that may explain some physical characteristics, though many aspects of the skeleton continue to defy complete scientific understanding. The Atacama skeleton continues to captivate researchers and the public because it represents a rare intersection of human biology, archaeology, and mystery. The tiny figure challenges assumptions about growth, development, and preservation, and the circumstances of its discovery only deepen the intrigue. Photographs of Atta reveal a form both delicate and unsettling, with a perfectly preserved skeletal structure that seems at once fragile and alien, a haunting reminder of how much remains unknown in the world, even in areas that are otherwise well studied and documented. People who observe Atta, either in study or images, often feel an enduring blend of fascination and disquiet. The combination of size, proportion, and preservation produces an impression that is impossible to ignore. The Atacama skeleton stands as one of the most perplexing human discoveries of the 21st century, a silent, enigmatic figure that continues to challenge understanding and spark questions about the limits of human variation and the mysteries that remain hidden even in the most desolate corners of the earth. The petrified forest of the lost continent, buried within what was once thought to be a completely submerged ancient landmass, the petrified forest discovered by geologists and explorers presents a scale and composition that defy traditional expectations. During an expedition in 2011, a team diving off the coast of Madagascar reported discovering enormous fossilized trees scattered across the seabed. The trunks, some measuring several meters in diameter, rose from the sand like frozen giants, their twisted forms preserved in astonishing detail. Every branch, every knot, seemed locked in time, creating an eerie landscape that resembled a nightmare captured in stone. Dr. Henrik Larsson, a marine geologist involved in the project, described the initial findings. "We were prepared to catalogue fossilized wood, but the sheer scale and the twisted, almost unnatural shapes took us by surprise. These were not simple remains of ancient trees, they were sculptures created by forces we don't fully understand. The trees' surfaces bore ridges and spirals that did not conform to any known growth patterns, suggesting either extreme environmental stress or some unknown geological process that reshaped the wood as it fossilized. The forest extends across a wide area, with some trees standing upright, while others have toppled and interlocked, creating labyrinthine pathways. Divers reported that the formations often appear to move or shift when viewed from different angles, an effect caused by the interaction of light, water, and the irregular surfaces of the petrified trunks. Some branches twist into shapes that suggest hands or grotesque faces, evoking a sense of life long after the wood has turned to stone. Photographs of the site give the impression of a silent army frozen in a moment of struggle, an image that has fascinated both scientists and the public. Dating of the petrified wood indicates that the forest existed during the late Paleozoic era, yet the level of preservation is unusual. Silica and other minerals replace the organic material over millennia, preserving intricate details of bark texture and growth rings. Even small knots and hollows remain visible, suggesting rapid mineralization under conditions that are not fully understood. The unusual patterns in the wood raise questions about environmental factors at the time, including seismic activity, flooding, and the chemical composition of the surrounding sediments. At the discovery site, researchers observed several unusual geological features. Some trees appear to be fused at the base, forming dense clusters that could not be explained by natural deposition alone. Other sections of the forest lie on sharply angled slopes, as if tectonic forces lifted and twisted them after they were already petrified. These irregularities suggest a violent geological history, one that transformed the forest from a living ecosystem into an alien frozen landscape. According to coastal folklore, an entire land, with its forests and wildlife, was swallowed by the ocean in just one night. While these stories were often dismissed as folklore, the discovery of the petrified forest lends a haunting context to such tales. Divers describe a sense of unease when exploring the site, noting that the shapes of the trunks and branches can create optical illusions of movement. The forest appears almost sentient, as though the petrified forms are aware of intruders and shifting subtly in response. Scientific investigation has documented hundreds of individual trees, each with unique twisting patterns and irregular growth features. Some of the trunks are hollowed out in ways that suggest disease, fire, or lightning strikes, while others display spiraling ridges that have no clear explanation. The combined effect of the formations creates a visual impression of unnatural motion and intent, a forest that seems alive despite being stone for millions of years. How landscapes preserve ancient life is challenged by the petrified forest. Its sheer size, complexity, and the strange shapes of its trees make it more than a fossil site. It is a monument to geological and possibly environmental phenomena that are still poorly understood. The twisting, jagged trunks evoke both beauty and horror, giving the impression of a world where the ordinary rules of nature have been distorted into something both alien and haunting. The petrified forest of the lost continent creates an indelible memory for all who see it. The towering stone trees, the labyrinth of twisted branches, and the illusion of motion all combine to create a landscape that feels ancient, alive, and unsettling. Even after leaving the site, explorers and researchers report lingering unease, a memory of a forest frozen in struggle and preserved in ways that continue to defy explanation. It is a reminder that the Earth's history contains mysteries far beyond ordinary comprehension, and that even in petrified silence, some landscapes can evoke fear, wonder, and the haunting presence of a world long lost to time. The volcanic glass catacombs of Kamchatka, Russia, a network of underground tunnels that defy easy explanation, has been found in Kamchatka's rugged volcanic landscape. Known locally as the Glass Catacombs, these formations were first documented in 2009 when a team of spelunkers descended into fissures near the Kluchevskaya Sopka volcano. The tunnels are lined with obsidian, volcanic glass formed from rapidly cooled lava, creating surfaces so sharp and reflective that navigating the catacombs requires extreme caution. Light from headlamps bounces unpredictably off the walls, producing shadows that seem to shift independently, giving the impression of movement even in stillness. The walls are smooth and mirror-like, said Dr. Viktor Sokolov, who explored the tunnels, and you're constantly tricked by illusions of shapes and figures moving. It's disorienting and unsettling, no matter how experienced you are. The tunnels twist and turn in ways that make mapping difficult, with sharp turns, vertical drops, and narrow passages that force careful, deliberate movement. The reflective surfaces amplify every sound, from footsteps to dripping water, creating a chorus of echoes that can be mistaken for whispers or distant voices. The catacombs' formations are not uniform. In some chambers, jagged shards of obsidian jut out like the teeth of giant predators, while in others, the walls curve into arches and spirals that resemble skeletal remains frozen in stone. Many surfaces produce optical illusions, shadows that appear to be grasping hands, reflections that suggest faces, and angles that seem to shift when viewed from different perspectives. These features combine to create an environment that feels alive and almost conscious, as though the catacombs are observing intruders and adjusting to their presence. Explorers have noted strange thermal anomalies in certain sections of the catacombs. Some areas remain surprisingly warm despite the cold external climate, while others produce sudden drafts or localized chills. Instruments detected fluctuations in magnetic fields, further complicating navigation and adding to the psychological strain of exploring the tunnels. Even experienced spelunkers reported vertigo, disorientation, and heightened anxiety, effects that persisted after leaving the catacombs and returning to the surface. The tunnels are said to be haunted, and the obsidian passages are rumored to snare the careless or warp their sanity. While these stories were often dismissed, the experiences of researchers suggest there may be a kernel of truth in the warnings. The combination of optical illusions, echoing sounds, and thermal anomalies creates a sensory environment that challenges perception, leaving explorers questioning what is real and what is imagined. Some tunnels remain unexplored, because of the danger posed by falling shards of glass and the risk of becoming disoriented in the labyrinthine network. The geology of the catacombs is fascinating as well as terrifying. Kamchatka is one of the most volcanically active regions in the world, and the obsidian walls formed from lava that cooled almost instantaneously upon contact with groundwater or ice. This rapid cooling created the sharp, glass-like surfaces that dominate the tunnels today. In some chambers, layers of volcanic ash and rock suggest past eruptions that may have reshaped the catacombs multiple times, leaving behind unstable floors and jagged ceilings that continue to evolve with each volcanic event. Under study, the catacombs remain as scientists explore and document them despite the looming threats. Advanced mapping technology, including 3D scanning and drones, has revealed a complex network of interconnected passages stretching for several kilometers. Some chambers are vast, like underground halls with ceilings high above the explorers' heads, while others are claustrophobic, barely wide enough for a single person to pass. The reflective surfaces and sharp formations create a constant sense of tension, a reminder that the environment is both beautiful and deadly. Entering the volcanic glass catacombs leaves a lasting, unsettling impression on all who dare. The interplay of light and shadow, the jagged obsidian formations, and the eerie echoes create a space that feels almost alive. Every step produces both fascination and fear as explorers navigate passages that challenge perception and test nerves. The catacombs remain one of the most enigmatic and unsettling natural formations in the world, a subterranean realm where geological forces have created a labyrinth of beauty, danger, and persistent mystery that continues to captivate and unsettle all who enter. The chilling artifacts of Teotihuacan, Mexico. Deep below the sun-baked streets of Teotihuacan, archaeologists have uncovered artifacts that challenge our understanding of the city and its people. In 2008, during an excavation near the Pyramid of the Moon, a team led by Dr. Raquel Ortega discovered a hidden chamber containing stone effigies of hybrid creatures. These figures combined human features with those of jaguars, birds, and snakes, carved with a level of detail that gave the impression of movement. The expressions on the faces were particularly unsettling, frozen in grimaces or snarls that seemed to convey intelligence or intent. The chamber itself was deliberately constructed, with walls coated in a thin layer of lime plaster that reflected the faint light brought by the excavation team. The effigies were arranged in patterns that suggested ritual significance, with some placed facing one another as if engaged in a silent confrontation. Small traces of pigments indicated that the figures had originally been painted, though most of the colours had faded over centuries. The combination of placement, expression, and size created a sense of an audience, watching and waiting, that many researchers described as unnerving. Dr. Ortega noted that these artifacts were unlike anything previously found at Teotihuacan. While the city is famous for its murals, pyramids, and residential compounds, these effigies conveyed a sense of deliberate menace. Some had elongated limbs, oversized heads, or exaggerated claws, and the blending of human and animal traits seemed to defy natural anatomy. The researchers speculated that the figures may have represented deities, spirits, or supernatural beings, though their precise purpose remains unknown. Further exploration revealed additional objects that deepened the mystery. Small stone masks, some no larger than a hand, were carved with grotesque expressions, and fragments of ritualistic tools were scattered across the chamber floor. Analysis suggested that these items may have been used in ceremonies intended to communicate with, or perhaps appease, unseen forces. The combination of realistic anatomy and abstract distortion in the artifacts contributed to a sense of unease, making it difficult for even experienced archaeologists to study them dispassionately. The dating of the artifacts places them around the height of Teotihuacan's influence, roughly between 150 and 450 CE. During this period, the city was a thriving center of trade, culture, and religion, with tens of thousands of inhabitants living in densely populated compounds. The effigies' placement within hidden chambers suggests that their creation was intended for restricted, possibly elite, ritual use rather than public display. This secrecy adds to the unnerving nature of the artifacts, implying that they were part of practices designed to evoke fear or awe. Questions emerged regarding the beliefs and anxieties of Teotihuacan's people following the discovery. The combination of animal and human traits, the exaggerated features, and the deliberate expressions of anger or suffering suggest a worldview in which the supernatural played a powerful and sometimes terrifying role. These artifacts may have served as reminders of the dangers inherent in the unseen world, or as tools to ensure compliance and devotion among participants in religious ceremonies. The meticulous craftsmanship indicates that the artisans were highly skilled and likely well versed in both spiritual symbolism and anatomy, making their creations all the more disquieting. Even after the excavation, the chamber continues to affect those who enter it. Researchers report a persistent sense of being observed, with shadows cast by the effigies appearing to shift as they move. The interplay of light and reflection off the plaster walls amplifies this effect, creating the illusion that the figures are alive. Many describe a lingering psychological impact, an impression that the chamber holds knowledge or intent beyond human understanding, a silent reminder of rituals and beliefs that have been lost to time. The chilling artifacts of Teotihuacan serve as a testament to the complexity and mystery of the city. Their grotesque forms, meticulous craftsmanship, and deliberate placement in hidden spaces create a haunting narrative, one that offers insight into a culture both advanced and deeply superstitious. For those who have encountered the chamber, the experience leaves a lasting sense of unease, as if they have glimpsed a world where the boundary between the natural and supernatural was both understood and feared, and where objects carved from stone could still inspire terror centuries after their creation. The enigmatic crystal spheres of Russia's Ural Mountains. Amid the remote peaks of the Ural Mountains, geologists stumbled upon something seemingly impossible to explain. In 2012, during a survey of an abandoned mining region, a team led by Dr. Mikhail Petrov uncovered dozens of perfectly spherical crystal formations embedded in the rocky soil. Each sphere measured between 15 and 40 centimeters in diameter, and its surface was polished to an almost glass-like smoothness, reflecting sunlight in sharp, brilliant flashes. What immediately captured attention was not just their shape, but the way they seemed to emit faint pulses of light when sunlight or artificial illumination hit them at certain angles. Initial analysis revealed that the spheres were composed of quartz and trace minerals found naturally in the region, but the level of perfection in their shape was highly unusual. Unlike typical crystals, which grow along axes and form jagged edges, these spheres were nearly flawless. Some researchers suggested that natural erosion and mineral deposition over millennia could account for their roundness, but no process known in geology produces such uniformity at this scale. The phenomenon puzzled the team, prompting them to document every sphere and map their locations carefully. As the scientists examined the spheres, they noticed other unusual effects. When two spheres were placed near each other, faint electromagnetic readings were detected, fluctuating in ways that seemed unrelated to natural background levels. Instruments recorded small magnetic anomalies around the formations, but attempts to reproduce the readings in controlled conditions proved difficult. The effect was subtle, yet consistent enough to suggest an interaction beyond ordinary mineral properties. Observers reported feeling dizzy or disoriented when standing too close to clusters of spheres, a psychological response that some attributed to the strange light reflections combined with the anomalies in the geomagnetic field. Mystery is heightened by the local legends surrounding the site. Villagers in nearby settlements told stories of the spirits of the mountains, leaving perfectly round stones as markers of power or warning. Some recounted tales of hunters who approached areas where the spheres were scattered and became lost, only to find themselves disoriented in familiar terrain. While these stories cannot be verified, the combination of legend and physical phenomena contributed to a sense of unease for those studying the spheres. The landscape surrounding the spheres is rugged and treacherous, with cliffs and dense forests, reinforcing the feeling that these objects are isolated in a place where ordinary rules do not apply. Several spheres showed small imperfections, faint cracks, and mineral inclusions, which allowed researchers to perform radiometric dating. The results indicated that the spheres had formed over thousands of years, yet the process by which they reached such perfection remained unknown. Some formations were partially buried, while others rested on the surface, seemingly placed with intention. The arrangement of the spheres suggested patterns that could be mistaken for random, but close inspection revealed alignments with natural features, such as rivers or ridges, raising questions about whether their positioning was accidental or deliberate. Using drones and remote sensing, scientists spent years exploring and mapping the formation. The spheres appear concentrated in specific areas, often in clusters, with some resting atop large rock outcrops and others partially hidden beneath forest debris. Researchers noted that sunlight filtering through the surrounding trees created moving patterns on the sphere's surfaces, making them appear to shimmer or glow from within. This optical effect heightened the sense that the spheres were not merely inert objects, but part of an environment that interacts subtly with light, movement, and observation. To face the crystal spheres is to undergo a haunting and disorienting experience. Their flawless shape, reflective surfaces, and faint energy emissions create an impression of intelligence or purpose, as though they were created with intent rather than by natural forces alone. Some researchers liken the effect to standing among objects that have been shaped to communicate, or perhaps to warn, though no message can be deciphered. The spheres' presence in the rugged Urals, combined with their unusual physical and optical properties, ensures that they continue to defy explanation and remain one of the most enigmatic natural phenomena ever documented in the region. The enigmatic crystal spheres of the Urals remain a source of fascination because they challenge understanding at multiple levels. They are simultaneously geological, optical, and magnetic mysteries, and their perfect form and unusual behavior leave a lasting impression on anyone who studies or observes them. Even as scientific investigation progresses, the spheres retain a sense of wonder and unease, a reminder that the Earth can produce objects that are both beautiful and unsettling, and that some of its secrets persist long after they are discovered. The Devil's Abyssal Coral, Caribbean Sea. Lurking in the Caribbean Sea's dark waters is a coral formation of bizarre design, so unsettling that it became known as the Devil's Abyssal Coral. The discovery came in 2014 during a deep-sea expedition led by marine biologist Dr. Alejandro Vargas, who was exploring areas near the Cayman Trench. At depths exceeding 200 meters, the team encountered a dense forest of black coral that stretched across the ocean floor for hundreds of meters. Unlike typical coral reefs, these formations appeared almost sculpted, with twisted branches resembling jagged hands and snarling faces frozen in stone-like rigidity. The visual effect was immediately disturbing. The coral branches jutted at irregular angles, often curling back toward themselves, creating hollow spaces that gave the impression of gaping mouths. Diver lights reflected off the surface, producing shadows that seemed to move independently in the currents. Some formations resembled human or animal skulls, while others appeared to reach upward as if grasping at unseen prey. Even experienced deep-sea divers described a sense of being watched, a psychological response amplified by the isolation and darkness of the abyss. The coral's environment, Dr. Vargas noted, defied all expectations of known ecosystems. The forest was teeming with unknown life forms, many of which moved quickly and erratically through the coral. Small bioluminescent organisms clung to the branches, producing flickering lights that further enhanced the sense of the coral being alive. Larger predators lurked in the shadows, their shapes visible only as vague silhouettes. The combination of the dense, labyrinthine coral and the constant presence of life created an environment that was both mesmerizing and unnerving. Analysis of the coral revealed unusual mineral content. While primarily composed of the same organic and calcareous structures found in standard black coral, some samples contained higher than normal concentrations of iron and manganese, which may account for the dark, almost metallic sheen. The shape of the branches also suggests a long period of slow growth under unique environmental pressures, including strong currents, low temperatures, and minimal sunlight. This combination of factors created a structure that appears deliberately twisted and threatening, unlike any other known coral formation. The location of the Devil's Abyssal Coral contributes to its mystery. The trench is one of the least explored areas of the Caribbean, and mapping is difficult due to depth, pressure, and strong underwater currents. Remote-operated vehicles, ROVs, have provided additional images and video, revealing the vast scale of the coral forest and the unnerving shapes of its formations. In some areas, the branches form dense clusters so compact that even small submersibles must carefully navigate through narrow corridors. The echoes of water movement and mechanical sounds produce a constant, low hum that amplifies the eerie effect. Sparse as they are, local tales speak of spirits in the deep, warning sailors and fishermen away from dangerous waters. While these accounts cannot be verified scientifically, the unusual formations and the feelings of unease reported by divers suggest that the legend may have a basis in observation rather than imagination. The black coral appears almost predatory, its twisted forms creating the illusion of movement, giving the impression of conscious design. Apart from visual and structural oddities, researchers discovered evidence of predatory organisms that appear to be endemic to the coral forest. Some species have adapted to cling to the sharp, uneven branches, while others navigate the labyrinthine passages, preying on smaller creatures. Observations indicate that the coral may influence local currents, concentrating nutrients and creating microhabitats that support life forms unknown elsewhere. This unusual interaction between the coral and the surrounding ecosystem adds another layer of mystery, suggesting that the formations may play a more active role in the environment than ordinary coral reefs. To witness the Devil's Abyssal Coral is to experience something that cannot be forgotten. The combination of black, twisted formations, bioluminescent flickers, and unknown predators produces a sense of danger and unease. Even in the absence of an immediate threat, the forest evokes a primal fear, as if one has entered a world beyond human control, a place where natural forces shape life into forms that inspire awe and dread. The Devil's Abyssal Coral remains one of the most enigmatic deep-sea discoveries in the Caribbean. Its twisted, jagged formations, strange mineral composition, and interactions with unknown organisms create an environment that is both beautiful and terrifying. For scientists, divers, and those who study the ocean's mysteries, the forest is a reminder that the deep sea still holds secrets that challenge understanding and evoke the haunting presence of a world entirely alien to the surface. The subterranean lava tubes of the Azores. The air inside the lava tubes of San Miguel Island carries a damp, metallic scent that seems to cling to the skin. As soon as explorers descend into the twisting corridors, they feel a shift in reality, as if the world above has been left behind. The tunnels stretch deep beneath the volcanic terrain, their walls lined with jagged basalt that glints faintly under headlamp beams. Shadows stretch and bend along the uneven surfaces, forming shapes that suggest hands reaching, claws curling, and faces frozen in silent screams. The twisting passages confound even experienced cavers, forcing slow, deliberate movements while keeping constant watch for sudden drops or collapsed sections. In some chambers, the rock formations rise like frozen waves, each ridge curling back on itself with sharp points that glimmer under light. The angles create illusions that deceive the eye, making the ceilings appear lower than they are, and the floors seem unstable even when solid. Occasionally, the sound of dripping water echoes so precisely it seems to come from a direction that cannot exist, amplifying the sense of unease. Dr. Inés Ferreira, who first mapped sections of the tubes in 2013, recalled the effect on her team. It's as if the tunnels are aware of you, watching each step. No matter how rationally you approach it, the mind cannot ignore the shapes and shadows. The tubes themselves were formed during volcanic eruptions centuries ago, when lava flowed beneath hardened surfaces and later drained, leaving behind hollow conduits. Unlike typical lava tubes, these passages are unusually wide in some places and impossibly narrow in others, creating a maze-like environment that seems deliberately confusing. Columns of rock jut from floors and ceilings in irregular patterns, resembling skeletal ribs or sharp claws. Some formations cluster into dense, spiky barriers that channel explorers into narrow corridors, producing a feeling of being guided through the tunnels by unseen forces. Mineral deposits add to the strangeness. Crystals grow along walls and ceilings in jagged spires, reflecting light in a way that makes them appear to shift as the explorers move. In some areas, the rock seems to shimmer, producing faint optical illusions that mimic movement or the presence of figures. The temperature fluctuates unpredictably, with pockets of warm air following cold drafts, creating microclimates that further disorient those who venture deep inside. Even the sound changes as explorers pass through different chambers. The echo of footsteps can become muted, distorted, or multiplied, adding a subtle but constant psychological tension. Legends from local communities speak of spirits inhabiting the volcanic caves, protecting the land, or punishing those who enter uninvited. While these stories are impossible to verify, the lava tubes themselves reinforce the myths. The jagged passages, sudden drops, and twisting corridors evoke a sense of danger that feels purposeful rather than coincidental. Even without the legends, humans respond to the environment instinctively. The brain interprets sharp angles and unusual shadows as threats, heightening awareness and fear. Life has adapted to the tunnels in ways that mirror their hostile architecture. Small colonies of bats cling to ceilings, moving silently through narrow openings, while insects navigate the jagged floor in coordinated patterns. Microbial mats and fungi cling to moist surfaces, creating faint glows in certain areas that look like ethereal traces of movement. The irregular architecture shapes the ecosystem, concentrating air currents, humidity, and light to produce pockets where species flourish in isolation, yet the overall impression remains that the tubes themselves dominate everything within them. Exploring the lava tubes is an exercise in constant vigilance. Every turn of a passage produces a new set of shadows, angles, and reflections. Shapes appear where none exist, and the interplay of light and rock tricks the eye into seeing motion in the still environment. Even the experienced cannot escape the feeling that the tunnels are watching, responding to their presence. The psychological effect lingers long after leaving, as if part of the underground world has followed the explorers back to the surface. The subterranean lava tubes of the Azores are more than geological formations. They are environments shaped by volcanic forces into spaces that challenge perception, instill fear, and inspire awe. The jagged walls, twisting corridors, and reflective crystals combine to create a labyrinth that feels alive, a reminder that beneath the earth lies a world governed by power, unpredictability, and mystery. For those who venture inside, the tunnels leave a lasting impression of a place both ancient and unnervingly sentient, where every shadow and echo suggests a hidden presence watching from the darkness. The abyssal vents of the Mariana Trench. The Mariana Trench is a place where sunlight cannot reach, and the crushing weight of the ocean presses against every surface. In 2015, deep-sea researchers aboard the submersible Deep Horizon descended nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface, aiming to study hydrothermal activity in one of the planet's most remote locations. As they approached the abyssal plain, columns of black smoke rose from fissures in the seabed, glowing faintly with an eerie orange light. These vents, known as the abyssal vents, emitted superheated fluids rich in minerals, creating clouds that appeared alive, writhing as they met the icy water. The environment around the vents is hostile and alien. Temperatures fluctuate dramatically, from near freezing in the surrounding water to hundreds of degrees at the vent openings. The pressure is immense, enough to crush steel, and the darkness is absolute, broken only by the submersible's lights. Despite these conditions, life thrives here in forms that seem impossible. Tube worms, giant clams, and shrimp cluster around the vents, feeding on chemosynthetic bacteria that convert chemicals into energy without sunlight. The creatures' adaptations are extreme, their exoskeletons and bodies shaped to withstand both pressure and temperature, giving them a grotesque and unsettling appearance to human eyes. Even seasoned scientists were disturbed by the sights. The vents form towers of blackened mineral deposits, some reaching several meters in height, twisting like dark spires. Crystalline growths cling to the structures, glinting in the submersible's lights, creating fleeting patterns that resemble faces or reaching hands. The water itself seems alive with motion, the dense mineral clouds swirling unpredictably. Observers often describe a sensation of being surrounded by something vast and aware, as if the vent field is a living organism, watching their every move. Chemical analysis revealed high concentrations of iron, sulfur, and manganese in the vent fluids, accounting for the strange coloration and chemical activity. Microbial mats cling to the vents and surrounding rocks, forming carpets of vibrant colors under light, and these communities form the base of a unique food chain. Yet even with this explanation, the scale and complexity of the ecosystem is disorienting. The formations appear deliberate, as if sculpted into impossible shapes, and the rapid changes in temperature and water currents create visual effects that are almost hypnotic. The area also produces sounds that are impossible to ignore. Instruments aboard the submersible recorded low-frequency pulses emanating from the vents, subtle hums and clicks that seem to originate from nowhere and everywhere at once. Some researchers reported a visceral reaction, a sense of unease, that cannot be attributed solely to the extreme environment. The combination of visual distortion, alien life forms, and constant, unplaceable sounds created an atmosphere that few could approach without tension or fear. Delving into the vent field, researchers discovered organisms entirely new to science. Some resemble oversized crabs with elongated limbs and clawed appendages, moving with a deliberate, almost predatory grace. Others have soft, gelatinous bodies that flare and contract, their movements eerily coordinated with the flow of vent fluids. Even small organisms seem to have evolved in ways that hint at intelligence or awareness beyond normal instinct, making the vent environment feel purposeful rather than random. The abyssal vents are constantly changing. Mineral formations grow and collapse, vents open and close, and currents shift unpredictably. This instability reinforces the sense that the area is alive, a place in which nothing is fixed and everything is shaped by forces beyond human comprehension. Divers and submersible pilots alike report lingering unease, describing the vents as a domain of ancient power, where the boundary between the natural and the almost supernatural blurs under extreme pressure and darkness. Witnessing the abyssal vents leaves an experience that lingers in memory. The twisted towers, glowing clouds, and alien creatures combine to create an environment that is beautiful, terrifying, and unlike anything on the surface. Even after leaving the depths, observers recall the sensation of being enveloped by an immense, watchful presence, a reminder that the planet holds regions that challenge understanding and evoke fear. The abyssal vents of the Mariana Trench remain one of the ocean's greatest mysteries. Their alien formations, unpredictable currents, and the presence of unknown organisms create a world that feels alive and sentient. For scientists and explorers, the vents are a haunting demonstration of how life adapts in extreme environments and how the deep sea continues to guard secrets that provoke awe, curiosity, and fear. The Göbekli Tepe structures, Turkey. The wind sweeps across the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, carrying dust and the faint echo of ancient stones settling into the earth. At the summit of one hill, the ruins of Göbekli Tepe rise in concentric circles, a site that has baffled archaeologists since its rediscovery in the 1990s. The limestone pillars, carved with images of strange animals and hybrid figures, stand in silence, their surfaces worn by millennia of exposure, yet retaining a chilling presence. Each T-shaped stone rises several meters, some over 6 meters tall, and many are decorated with reliefs depicting predators, serpents, and creatures that defy natural classification. Unlike typical Neolithic settlements, Göbekli Tepe lacks evidence of ordinary domestic life. There are no hearths, no trash pits, no signs of permanent habitation. Instead, the site appears entirely ceremonial, a deliberate construction for purposes that remain unknown. Excavations, led by Dr. Klaus Schmidt in the early 2000s, revealed that the site is over 11,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by thousands of years. Scholars are still debating how early humans achieved such precise stonework with rudimentary tools, and why they chose to build in such a remote and elevated location. The arrangement of the pillars adds to the mystery. They form circles and rings, some small, others large enough to require multiple people to stand inside comfortably. The carvings of animals and strange hybrid forms are not merely decorative, they appear in repeated sequences, as if conveying a message or encoding ritual knowledge. Some pillars show figures with humanoid bodies and bird-like heads, while others combine human and feline characteristics. The sheer variety of motifs suggests symbolic or spiritual significance that has been lost to time. Visitors to the site often report a sense of unease. The pillars seem to loom, casting long shadows across the dry soil and creating the illusion of motion as the sun moves across the sky. Even in daylight, the carvings appear to shift subtly in perspective, giving the impression that the animals are watching. Local folklore speaks of hills that are alive with memory, a phrase that seems almost literal when standing among the circles of Göbekli Tepe. Archaeologists describe the site as a place where ordinary perception struggles to comprehend scale, purpose, and meaning. Excavations uncovered stone tools, small figurines, and remnants of what might have been ritual offerings. Yet these artifacts provide few answers. The carvings on the pillars suggest a sophisticated understanding of predators and symbolic representation, but no writing or codified language has been found. Some researchers propose that Göbekli Tepe was a pilgrimage site, attracting people from distant regions, while others suggest it was a center for astronomical observation, as some alignments correspond to solstices or stellar events. The construction methods also defy easy explanation. Stones weighing several tons were quarried nearby, yet moving and erecting them without advanced technology remains a puzzle. Some pillars were carved in place, while others were shaped separately and transported uphill. The level of planning, coordination, and labor required points to an organized society capable of complex engineering, yet no permanent settlements accompany the site. It is as if the builders devoted themselves entirely to a purpose that has since vanished. The imagery on the pillars is unsettling. Predatory animals like lions, foxes, and snakes are carved with exaggerated features, teeth bared and claws extended. Hybrid creatures are frozen in motion, twisting unnaturally, as though caught between worlds. Some scholars suggest the figures represent a cosmology lost to history, a vision of the universe as understood by people whose thoughts were intertwined with the natural and supernatural alike. Others argue that the images may have been intended to intimidate, conveying power and control over unseen forces. Standing among the pillars, it is difficult not to feel the weight of time pressing down. The site communicates without words, its silence amplified by the barren surroundings and the wind that cuts across the hilltop. Each step reveals new carvings, new alignments, new angles from which the pillars seem alive. Even after leaving, the impression lingers. Göbekli Tepe is not just an archaeological site. It is a place where human imagination and ritual intersect with something vast and unknowable, leaving behind a haunting record of early civilization that continues to challenge understanding. The mysteries of Göbekli Tepe endure because they touch on both human ambition and the unknown. Its precise construction, eerie imagery, and apparent ritual focus suggest a knowledge and purpose far beyond what might be expected from people of the time. For researchers, the site is a reminder that the origins of civilization are intertwined with fear, awe, and reverence for forces that humans may never fully comprehend. In the circles of Göbekli Tepe, the past seems alive, and the ancient carvings continue to watch those who walk among them. The terracotta army anomalies, China. The soft dust of Xi'an fills the air as archaeologists descend into the pits of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum, a site that has drawn attention since the first soldiers were unearthed in 1974. Rows upon rows of terracotta warriors stretch across the excavated chambers, their expressions stoic, faces frozen in time, each figure unique in stance and detail. Yet amidst the thousands of standard soldiers, anomalies have been discovered that unsettle even the most experienced researchers. Some statues display exaggerated features, grotesque expressions, or distorted limbs that appear almost alive, diverging from the carefully crafted uniformity expected of Qin-era craftsmanship. Dr. Li Wen, who has studied the site for over a decade, recalls one chamber where several figures had twisted necks and wide eyes that seem to follow movement across the pit. The anomalies are not limited to facial distortions. Some statues are disproportionately large, with arms or legs bent in unnatural ways. Others show signs of what might be deliberate mutilation, as if the sculptors intended to convey power, fear, or some form of ritualistic symbolism beyond the ordinary representation of soldiers. The mausoleum's excavations have shown that the anomalies appear grouped, suggesting deliberate placement instead of accidental defects. Some of the distorted warriors guard central areas or stand near the entrances to chambers that may have contained treasures or ceremonial objects. Archaeologists speculate that these figures may have been intended to ward off intruders, their grotesque forms designed to intimidate. Others suggest a symbolic purpose, representing chaos or spiritual forces that the emperor sought to control in the afterlife. The sheer scale of the terracotta army magnifies the unsettling effect. Thousands of figures fill the pits, each with individualized features, and when anomalies appear among them, they disrupt the visual rhythm. Shadows cast by overhead lighting reveal unnatural angles, and the reflective surfaces of glazed clay catch light in ways that make distorted faces appear to move. Visitors often report a lingering unease, a sensation that the figures are watching or reacting to their presence. Even the preservation process has revealed new layers of strangeness. Some figures show internal differences in clay composition, with denser cores or unusual mineral inclusions. These variations may have contributed to the subtle distortions in posture or expression, but the patterns suggest more than accidental variation. Detailed scans reveal that certain anomalies share characteristics, such as elongated fingers, protruding cheekbones, or wide staring eyes, hinting at a deliberate, repeated design choice by the artisans. Historical records from the Qin dynasty provide little explanation. Emperor Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with immortality and guarding his afterlife, but no texts specify why some soldiers were created differently. Legends surrounding the mausoleum tell of protective spirits inhabiting the underground army, with some accounts describing figures that move or shift when disturbed. While these stories are unverifiable, the human brain responds to the distorted forms with instinctive caution, amplifying the sense of dread. Some anomalies also exhibit signs of damage that cannot be fully explained by age or excavation. Cracks and fractures appear in patterns inconsistent with soil pressure or human interference. In a few cases, small pits and scratches suggest interaction with substances or tools unknown to modern archaeologists. These irregularities, combined with the eerie expressions and contorted postures, create an environment that feels both historical and strangely alive. The arrangement of the figures further contributes to their unsettling presence. Warriors with grotesque features often occupy key positions along pathways, at corners, or near focal points of the pit. In some chambers, the distorted soldiers face inward towards central pillars as if guarding or focusing attention on something unseen. Others stand among standard figures, their differences creating subtle patterns that the eye detects subconsciously, producing a feeling of imbalance or tension throughout the chamber. Experiencing the terracotta army firsthand overwhelms visitors with its sheer scale and precision. Every figure seems to possess individuality, and the anomalies disrupt expectations, forcing observers to confront the unnatural within the familiar. The combination of careful craftsmanship, sheer quantity, and deliberate distortion produces a psychological effect that is difficult to articulate, a sense that the past is observing, judging, or even interacting with the present. The terracotta army anomalies remain one of the most haunting aspects of Emperor Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. They challenge the understanding of ancient art, ritual, and symbolism, suggesting knowledge or beliefs that may never be fully explained. For archaeologists, historians, and visitors alike, the pits are a reminder that even within structured order, the human imagination and fear of the unknown can manifest in ways that endure across millennia. In the shadows of Xi'an, the distorted warriors continue to stand, silent yet commanding attention, guardians of secrets that time itself has been unable to fully reveal. The Olmec colossal heads, Mexico. The humid air of Veracruz clings to everything, carrying the scent of wet earth and river mud as archaeologists approach the ancient Olmec sites. Giant stone heads rise from the ground, some over 3 meters tall, their faces carved in striking detail, yet imbued with an unsettling intensity. The sheer size of the sculptures is enough to create awe, but what makes them haunting is the expressions, broad noses, thick lips, and deep-set eyes that seem to follow movement across the plaza. Each head is distinct, yet all share a sense of weight and authority that feels almost sentient. Beginning in the late 1930s, excavations near La Venta and San Lorenzo brought the first Olmec heads to light. Archaeologists quickly realized that the sculptures were not mere decorative monuments. The stones were transported from quarries located tens of kilometers away, an enormous feat given their size and weight, some estimated at 20 tons or more. How the Olmec people achieved this with the technology available at the time remains a subject of ongoing study and debate. Even small scratches or irregularities in the carvings suggest hands-on adjustment, deliberate shaping that took extraordinary skill. The heads are often depicted wearing helmets or headdresses, adding to their imposing presence. Some scholars suggest these adornments mark rulers or warriors, but others argue they symbolize spiritual guardianship. The carvings are so precise that the shadows they cast during different times of day appear to animate the faces, emphasizing features in ways that can create subtle feelings of discomfort. Walk past one in the late afternoon, and the eyes appear to narrow or track your steps. The lips seem to press into a faint frown that is not truly there, but impossible to ignore. Local lore adds another layer of mystery. Indigenous stories speak of spirits inhabiting the heads, overseeing the land, and punishing those who disrupt their resting places. Villagers recount tales of work crews refusing to move stones when misfortune followed, or of excavators feeling sudden chills and disorientation near certain sculptures. While these stories cannot be verified scientifically, the psychological effect of standing near such massive, meticulously carved faces is undeniable. Humans instinctively react to large, staring eyes, and the colossal heads exploit this in a way that makes observers uneasy. The location of the heads is also significant. Many are placed on elevated platforms or along riverbanks, commanding wide views of the surrounding territory. Their positioning suggests a deliberate strategy of observation, control, or ritual importance. Researchers have noted patterns in the placement of the heads, with alignments possibly corresponding to celestial events or local geography. Each head, though massive, seems to relate to its surroundings, as if part of a larger design that is lost to time but still perceptible through its scale and orientation. Analysis of the stones themselves adds to the unease. Basalt, the primary material, is heavy and difficult to carve, yet the Olmec achieved smooth contours, symmetrical features, and deeply incised eyes and mouths. Tool marks indicate extraordinary patience and precision, with repeated abrasion and careful shaping. In some heads, subtle asymmetries enhance the lifelike appearance, creating a sense of realism that is startling given the scale. Even centuries later, the faces project presence, as though they were intended to outlast human memory and continue observing. Among the heads, anomalies are particularly unsettling. Some show exaggerated features, such as pronounced jaws, unusually wide noses, or eyes that seem farther apart than natural proportion. Others exhibit damage in unusual patterns, fractures that appear almost deliberate, or erosion that accentuates the intensity of the gaze. These irregularities contribute to the sensation that the heads were designed not just as representations of rulers, but as guardians or watchers, sculptures meant to exert influence over those who enter their vicinity. In the presence of the Olmec heads, their dominance is impossible to ignore. The combination of size, placement, craftsmanship, and expression evokes a psychological response that transcends ordinary admiration for artistry. Visitors describe a feeling of being observed, a subtle tension that lingers even after leaving the site. Unlike modern statues, which are often decorative, these ancient sculptures create a presence that feels alive, intentional, and unyielding. The Olmec colossal heads continue to captivate and disturb scholars, tourists, and local communities alike. Their precision, size, and placement suggest a society capable of extraordinary planning, artistry, and possibly ritual intent. The faces carved in stone remain silent witnesses to the past, guardians of secrets embedded in a culture that flourished thousands of years ago. In the shadows of Veracruz, the heads still watch, their eyes holding an intensity that cannot be ignored and reminding all who approach that some creations are meant to endure as observers, eternal and imposing. The Antikythera mechanism, Greece. The waters off the coast of Antikythera are deceptively calm, their blue surface hiding centuries of sunken history. In 1901, a group of sponge divers stumbled upon a Roman-era shipwreck, tangled among jagged rocks. Among the scattered amphorae and remnants of cargo, they discovered a corroded bronze artifact, unlike anything seen before. What would later be called the Antikythera mechanism appeared to be a simple collection of gears at first glance, yet closer inspection revealed an intricate assembly of interlocking components that suggested extraordinary knowledge for its time. Initial studies puzzled scholars for decades. The mechanism contained at least 30 gears, arranged with precision to perform calculations related to celestial movements. It could predict eclipses, track lunar cycles, and even indicate the positions of planets. Researchers in the 1950s and 1960s began painstaking reconstructions, but it was not until modern X-ray imaging and 3D modeling that the true complexity became apparent. The level of engineering is astonishing for a device believed to have been constructed between 150 and 100 BCE, predating any known mechanical computer by more than 1,000 years. Small in size, no bigger than a shoebox, the artifact hints at the extraordinary intellect behind its creation. The gears, some smaller than a fingernail, interlock with remarkable precision. Minute inscriptions cover the inner surfaces, marking calculations and cycles that remain partly undeciphered. Even today, no other mechanism from the ancient world approaches this level of sophistication, and many scholars are convinced that similar devices may have existed but were lost to time. Such a discovery forces us to reconsider the potential achievements of civilizations long past. How could a society without modern tools create such precise mechanical systems? Who designed it, and for what purpose? Some argue that the device was a teaching tool, demonstrating the motion of celestial bodies to an elite few. Others propose it had ritual or calendrical significance, tied to astronomy, agriculture, or navigation. Regardless of intent, holding a reconstruction of the mechanism gives a sense of almost uncanny intelligence, as if the device itself embodies knowledge that predates recorded science. The mechanism's fragments, though corroded, reveal astonishing detail. Fine teeth on the gears are evenly spaced, and the surfaces show signs of repeated polishing and adjustment. Inscriptions provide evidence of calculations aligned with the Metonic cycle, a 19-year lunar calendar, and possibly even the Calippic cycle, a refinement of earlier astronomical systems. The presence of planetary indicators suggests an awareness of celestial bodies that were not commonly observed in detail until centuries later. Every aspect of the mechanism reflects purpose, precision, and a vision that seems almost otherworldly. Attempts to replicate the device demonstrate its genius. Even with modern tools, engineers find it challenging to recreate all functions accurately. The gears must align perfectly, and any slight deviation can disrupt the calculated cycles. Observers describe a sense of awe when seeing working reconstructions, noting how ancient knowledge and craftsmanship combine to produce movement that mirrors the heavens themselves. There is a tactile quality to the machine, a sense that each rotation of a gear is connected to something larger, an invisible rhythm of time and space. The Antikythera mechanism also carries a haunting presence because of what it represents. It is a window into a lost understanding, evidence that human ingenuity once reached levels that have since disappeared. Scholars imagine the hands that shaped each gear, inscribed each letter, and tested each rotation. These were artisans and thinkers who operated in secrecy or with intent now obscured, leaving behind a device that continues to challenge comprehension and imagination. Confronting the mechanism, or replicas, one senses its dual character, at once fragile and commanding, small yet monumental in consequence. It conveys knowledge that feels almost impossible for its time, as if the ancients had glimpsed principles of the cosmos that would only be rediscovered millennia later. Its silent gears continue to turn in thought experiments and demonstrations, reminding all who study it of a civilization capable of extraordinary understanding. As a relic of ancient ingenuity, the Antikythera mechanism continues to baffle and inspire. Its engineering, inscriptions, and astronomical functions suggest knowledge far beyond what most scholars once believed possible in ancient Greece. For historians and engineers alike, it is a haunting reminder that human achievement can leave traces that challenge time, defy expectations, and provoke wonder. Even after more than a century of study, the mechanism refuses to fully reveal its secrets, preserving an aura of enigma that continues to captivate the imagination. The buried monoliths of Gobustan, Azerbaijan. The rocky plains of Gobustan stretch under an endless sky, the air dry and carrying the scent of limestone and ancient soil. Beneath this seemingly empty landscape lie massive monoliths, partially buried in layers of earth and sediment, their surfaces etched with carvings that are both precise and unsettling. Archaeologists first took notice of the stones in the mid-20th century, though local populations had long known of their existence. What makes these monoliths unusual is not just their size, some reaching over 5 meters in height, but the disturbing imagery inscribed across them. The carvings depict scenes of predation, hunting, and ritual, with figures that appear human and animal, yet often merged in grotesque ways. Lions and wolves are shown with exaggerated teeth and claws, their bodies intertwined with human figures in positions that suggest struggle or sacrifice. Inscriptions indicate these depictions are not merely symbolic, they are warnings or records of practices that are no longer understood. Researchers estimate the carvings date back over 5,000 years, a time when the region was a crossroads of nomadic tribes and early settlements. The digs revealed that the monoliths were purposefully interred in select locations, with some partially covered, suggesting ceremonial meaning or secretive intent. In 1966, a team led by Dr. Aydin Aliyev unearthed several monoliths along the banks of the Gurjavan River. The moment they exposed the carvings, the intensity of the imagery became apparent. Faces with wide eyes and snarling mouths seemed to emerge from the stone, giving the impression of watching anyone who approached. Shadows cast by the rising sun accentuated the forms, making the figures appear to move as the light shifted. Each monolith carries a unique narrative, yet patterns emerge across the site. Figures often display impossible proportions, with elongated limbs or twisted torsos. Some carvings combine human and predatory features so seamlessly that it is difficult to distinguish where one ends and the other begins. These forms suggest a complex understanding of anatomy and artistic skill, but the intent behind them remains obscure. Scholars debate whether they represent mythological beings, ritual participants, or a deliberate attempt to convey fear and control. The eerie aura of the monoliths is deepened by the folklore told about them. Stories speak of stones that move slightly when no one is watching, or of travelers who feel sudden chills when standing near specific carvings. Some accounts describe unexplained sounds echoing across the plains at night, attributed to spirits inhabiting the buried stones. While such claims cannot be verified scientifically, the psychological impact of the massive, looming carvings is undeniable. The human brain responds instinctively to faces, and the distorted forms etched in stone create a lasting sense of unease. Studying the carvings shows that their creators employed techniques ahead of their time. The lines are deep and consistent, suggesting the use of chisels or stone tools with precise control. Some surfaces bear faint traces of pigment, hinting that the imagery may once have been more vivid. Geological studies reveal that the monoliths were quarried from nearby limestone outcroppings, yet moving and positioning them required coordinated effort, implying a society capable of complex planning and labor organization. The combination of scale, detail, and placement underscores the importance of these stones to their creators. The positioning of the monoliths contributes to their haunting effect. Many stand in isolation, while others are aligned in sequences that might have corresponded to astronomical events, seasonal cycles, or ritual pathways. Approaching the monoliths from certain angles emphasizes the distortions in the carvings, making the figures seem to twist or stretch unnaturally. Even slight changes in perspective can create illusions of movement, giving the impression that the ancient figures are aware of those observing them. New monoliths and fragments are discovered by researchers annually, but the full narrative remains a mystery. No written records explain the carvings, and no accompanying artifacts provide clear context. What remains is a landscape scattered with enormous stones whose faces carry expressions of fear, aggression, or ritualized ecstasy. These monoliths are more than artistic creations. They are remnants of a culture's beliefs, fears, and possibly a means to control or protect knowledge now lost to history. Within the field of Gobistan's buried monoliths, the stone's imposing presence and purposeful arrangement are impossible to ignore. The carvings communicate across millennia, conveying power, ritual, and an unsettling awareness. Visitors and archaeologists alike describe a feeling of being watched, as if the stones themselves remember the people who created them. In this barren, windswept landscape, the monoliths endure as silent witnesses to a civilization that left behind no explanations, only the haunting imprint of its imagination and fear. The underwater spire forest of Tonga. The waters around Tonga are usually calm and inviting, with turquoise waves rolling gently over coral reefs. Yet beneath the surface, far deeper than sunlight can reach, lies a hidden landscape, both alien and terrifying. In the late 1990s, a team of marine geologists conducting deep-sea sonar surveys discovered formations that initially appeared as random peaks on the screen. As they sent submersibles down for closer inspection, the full scale of the underwater spire forest revealed itself. Sharp, towering rock spires rise from the ocean floor like jagged teeth, clustered in patterns that suggest neither natural randomness nor simple geological processes. The first dives, conducted in 1998, encountered immediate challenges. Strong, unpredictable currents swept through the spires, forcing pilots to navigate carefully or risk collision. Visibility was poor, even with floodlights, as suspended sediment moved with every current. When the divers finally reached the base of the spires, they found surfaces covered in dark algae and tiny invertebrates, clinging to the rock in almost organized formations. The spires themselves vary in size. some only a few meters tall, others towering over 30 meters, their sharp edges creating a forest of stone in perpetual shadow. The arrangement of the spires struck researchers as highly unusual. Rather than spreading evenly, the tallest formations cluster in dense groups, separated by deep channels. Sonar mapping suggested that the channels may have been shaped by underwater lava flows or tectonic activity, but no known process fully accounts for the striking verticality and density of the forest. In some areas, the spires lean at impossible angles, forming natural archways or passages that seem deliberately arranged, though no evidence indicates human involvement. The sheer scale and precision of the formations make the forest feel like a deliberately constructed labyrinth rather than a natural seafloor. Marine life inhabiting the forest is equally unsettling. Unidentified predatory organisms glide silently between spires, their movements precise and almost predatory. Some appear bioluminescent, giving off faint, eerie glows that illuminate the surrounding rocks in ghostly patterns. Large schools of fish weave around the spires in near-perfect synchrony, disappearing instantly into crevices when a submersible approaches. Divers report feeling watched by unseen creatures, a sensation heightened by the shifting shadows cast by both light and the spires themselves. The underwater currents add another layer of danger. Even with advanced thrusters, submersibles struggle to maintain stable positions. In some areas, water funnels between spires with incredible force, creating turbulent vortices capable of displacing objects or small vehicles. Dives in 2002 recorded instruments being swept unpredictably, forcing scientists to retreat repeatedly. These currents give the forest a sense of active hostility, as if the formations themselves are alive and aware, manipulating the environment to discourage intrusion. Geological samples suggest the spires consist of hardened volcanic rock, possibly formed during eruptions that occurred millions of years ago. Yet the combination of sheer height, density, and sharpness of the structures remains puzzling. Erosion typically softens submerged formations, but here the spires retain jagged points and narrow edges, defying conventional understanding of underwater geology. Researchers speculate that a combination of rapid lava cooling, tectonic uplift, and unusual mineral composition may have contributed to their preservation, though no theory fully explains the scale or arrangement. Explorers have also noted optical illusions caused by the spires. Floodlights reflect unpredictably, creating the impression of movement where none exists. Shadows stretch and twist as currents shift, giving the appearance of giant hands or jagged faces among the rocks. Some divers report moments of vertigo or spatial disorientation, unsure which spires are solid and which are reflections or illusions. The environment seems to manipulate perception as effectively as it challenges physical navigation. The underwater spire forest of Tonga remains largely unexplored due to depth, danger, and unpredictable currents. Only a handful of dives have reached the deepest areas, and even with modern submersibles, researchers proceed cautiously. The forest continues to evoke awe and fear, a place where the ocean hides a landscape as alien as any imagined in fiction. Its jagged towers, aggressive currents, and strange inhabitants create a setting both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder that the deepest parts of our world are still largely unknown. Full comprehension of the spire forest continues to elude observers. Every expedition uncovers new formations, new passages, and new hazards. Scientists leave with more questions than answers, their maps incomplete, and their notes filled with observations that challenge conventional geology and marine biology. Standing, or rather floating, amid the spires, it is impossible not to feel the overwhelming scale and power of the place. The underwater spire forest endures as a realm of alien beauty and subtle menace, a landscape shaped by forces both understood and mysterious, and a reminder that some corners of our planet remain defiantly untamed. The cursed obsidian temple of Mexico's jungle. The dense jungle of southern Mexico swallows sound, its thick canopy filtering sunlight into shifting patterns on the forest floor. In 1987, archaeologists led by Dr. Carmen Lopez discovered a site hidden beneath centuries of growth and decay, a temple built almost entirely of black obsidian. The walls gleamed with a dark, reflective surface that seemed to absorb light, and intricate carvings covered nearly every visible surface. The temple had lain undiscovered for centuries, and approaching it felt like stepping into a place removed from time, where history and danger were entangled. The structure is imposing, even in partial ruin. Towers rise above the treetops, jagged edges catching glimpses of sunlight in ways that resemble teeth or claws. Interior chambers are narrow and labyrinthine, with floors and walls polished by both use and the natural properties of the volcanic glass. Carvings depict humanoid figures with elongated limbs and exaggerated features, often entwined with jagged symbols that seem to pulse with energy when viewed from certain angles. Even seasoned explorers described a sense of being watched, as though the carvings were aware of every movement. Signs of ritual activity were found during excavation, yet much about them continues to puzzle researchers. Charred remains of offerings were found in niches along the walls, including bones, pottery fragments, and small obsidian figurines. Carbon dating suggests these practices continued sporadically over centuries, likely by multiple groups. The temple's design indicates careful planning and a desire to create an immersive, almost oppressive environment. Passageways narrow suddenly, chambers shift direction without warning, and reflective surfaces create illusions that can disorient visitors. Researchers frequently lost their bearings, even with detailed mapping equipment, as the reflective walls multiplied images and distorted distances. The jungle hides a place of shadows, as local stories warn, protected by spirits who punish intruders and safeguard forbidden knowledge. Villagers recounted stories of explorers who vanished for days, only to reappear disoriented, claiming that the temple had seemed to move around them. Many spoke of feelings of unease, chills, or a sudden urge to flee, experiences echoed in the field notes of archaeologists. While supernatural claims cannot be verified, the physical properties of the temple obsidian walls, reflective surfaces, and narrow chambers create an environment that amplifies fear and confusion. The carvings themselves are unsettling in detail. Figures are often hybridized, combining human and predatory traits in ways that defy natural anatomy. Eyes are carved disproportionately large, mouths gaping as if frozen in a scream, and hands stretched into unnatural positions. Some chambers contain sequences of figures that seem to tell a story, though the narrative remains opaque. Certain walls appear to create visual effects when light hits at specific angles, giving the impression that figures shift or reach outward. These effects, combined with the temple's layout, make each step feel like moving through a living, reactive space. Structural analysis shows that the temple was built with remarkable precision. Large obsidian blocks are fitted tightly together, despite the stone's brittle nature. Floors and walls have been leveled and polished to an almost unnatural smoothness, suggesting advanced knowledge of stoneworking techniques. In some chambers, the reflective surfaces are so even that explorers have mistaken illusions for actual openings, requiring careful inspection to navigate safely. Small shards litter the floor, reflecting light in unsettling ways and adding to the sense of danger. Even underwater surveys of nearby cenotes hint at connections between water, ritual, and the temple's placement. Channels may have been used to control water flow or acoustics within chambers, enhancing chants, footsteps, or ritual sounds. Some researchers suggest that the design was intended to create sensory manipulation, immersing participants fully in a disorienting environment that heightened fear, reverence, or submission. Many regions remain a mystery, even following decades of study. Dense jungle and structural instability limit access, and modern safety protocols restrict the number of archaeologists allowed inside at one time. Every expedition reports the same sensations: disorientation, a sense of being watched, and the haunting visual effects caused by light, shadow, and reflection. Cameras and lights can document only a fraction of the experience, failing to convey the subtle psychological impact. The cursed obsidian temple endures as one of Mexico's most enigmatic sights. Its black walls, jagged design, and eerie carvings combine to create a place that is both beautiful and terrifying. Archaeologists continue to study it, yet much remains unexplained. Standing within its chambers, one is confronted with the tangible presence of a culture that understood how to manipulate perception, space, and emotion, leaving behind a temple that feels alive with memory, mystery, and menace.